Tonight's verdict in the trial of an illegal immigrant who confessed to accidentally shooting Kate Steinle was nevertheless found not guilty of murder or manslaughter is renewing the debate over sanctuary cities and border security. Here to discuss, Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com, syndicated columnist and host of The Ben Shapiro Show, and Adrienne Elrod. She was a director of strategic communications for Democrat Hillary Clinton. Good to see you both tonight.
You too, Shannon.
All right, I want to read a little bit of the reaction that we have from the ICE deputy director tonight. He says this: "It is unconscionable that politicians across this country continue to endanger the lives of Americans with sanctuary policies while ignoring the harm inflicted on their constituents. Following the conclusion of this case, ICE will work to take custody of Mr. Garcia Zarate and ultimately remove him from the country." Adrienne, he's come back 5 times. This will be number 6. How will it be any different?
Look, there's no question that in this particular case, the system at the federal, state, and local level absolutely broke down. I still can't wrap my head around this verdict. I think a lot of people as are trying to unpack what actually happened and how the jurors came to this conclusion. But look, local law enforcement in cities that are so-called sanctuary cities will say that having an ongoing dialogue with the immigrant community in their cities is what actually makes it safer. So as a political pundit going on a television show, I'm certainly not going to question what local law enforcement think and how they want to govern their communities, but that is what they say. And you do see crimes that are lowered in sanctuary cities among the immigrant community compared to some cities where they feel that they cannot communicate with law enforcement.
All right, Ben, what do you make of that argument?
I mean, I live in Los Angeles, and I can tell you that the idea that making sure that illegal immigrants continue to be released back onto the streets rather than being given over to the feds, that is not going to lower the crime rate. The lack of trust between the immigrant community and the law enforcement community, that needs to be overcome. But that can't be overcome by simply saying that illegal immigrants should be released back into the community rather than being handed over to the feds. I mean, in this particular case, this guy was a repeat criminal many times. If you've been a citizen of the United States, here in California we have a 3 strikes law. If you're convicted 3 times in felony cases, you end up in jail for a very, very long time, for life. In this particular case, this guy was convicted of a bunch of different crimes. He was deported over and over and over again. He was set free by sanctuary cities that refused to coordinate with federal law enforcement. He was out. He picked up a gun. He stole a gun, presumably, and then he shot Kate Steinle. Whether he did it, whether he meant to shoot her or whether he just meant to discharge the firearm is of no consequence. When you pick up that gun and you know that it has the possibility of firing and it fires, then this is at the very best involuntary manslaughter.
Well, but not according to this jury. They said not guilty on that count as well. Adrienne, do you get how this topic was such a good one for President Trump when he was running, why it resonated with so many people, and why just this one case alone really captured the nation's attention, that this is an issue, these sanctuary cities letting people go, being very permissive with illegal immigration. Do you understand what he tapped into there and why people were so responsive to that?
I do understand what he tapped into, but I also think it's an absolute shame that he used this case time and time again as a political football. When the family of Kate has gone through so much tragedy and so much heartache, and to have this used in any sort of political way by the President of the United States during the campaign when he was running as a candidate, now as president, is a real shame. But look, this is a very complex issue, and I think what's important to understand here is that this is one incident. What we've got to do is figure out how to handle the 800,000 dreamers who are living here in the United States, allowing them to live in limbo, allowing a lot of the immigrant community to wonder what's going to happen, to fear deportation every single day.
All right, I got to bring in Ben here really quick because we're out of time. Ben, quick response from you.
The basic notion that an illegal immigrant can commit crimes in this country and then re-enter the country at will is why President Trump won, and it's why President Trump ought to push for the construction of that barrier and ought to make sure that the American people are safe from predators like this one.
We will expect to hear more from the White House on this. Ben and Adrienne.
Well, to answer Jessica's question there, physical barriers work, and that's why Democrats don't like them. But Democrats are going to be put in a very interesting situation now. They're going to have to choose between illegal immigrants and the American people. And I'm anxiously awaiting, the response of the Democratic Party, because I think it's going to really help us in 2020.
Dana, like you, I've been using firearms since I'm young. He said he was aiming this at a sea animal. And then it became, I stepped on it. And then it did ricochet and hit Kate Steinle in the back. This particular Sig Sauer, it's not one that I fired. I was wondering if you have.
I have, and I thought what Dan Bongino said earlier was pretty spot on. I thought that the defense was moronic on this, and I realized that, Sean, that there are certain things that the jury saw that we, the people, didn't see. But I do find it interesting that the same people who want to look at ballistics and forensic reports as it concerns ballistics, they ignored that in the Mike Brown case. Look, and for the lawyer to also invoke Donald Trump and then falsely also say that there's some sort of, that there's an investigation that was based on Kremlin propaganda which substantiated a FISA warrant, I thought was bizarre. This is moronic. People in California are not protected. The courts have said that there is no justice, no peace for the law-abiding. Those who break the law and enter illegally are given preference over law-abiding Americans, and California has now declared itself to be a dangerous state, Sean. California has decided that it wants to make it virtually impossible for law-abiding Americans to be able to choose their pro-choice right of self-defense, you know, the feminist equalizer, a boomstick. But if you're an illegal alien and you are in that state being protected by it as a sanctuary state, well, then you're afforded all of the luxuries of American citizens, including rights that we have sacrificed for, due process, and you're given a slap on the wrist that this wasn't even involuntary manslaughter is an affront to due process. It's an affront to justice and all the law-abiding citizens in California. This is shameful.
This system failed on so many different levels. If I'm President Trump tonight, I'm saying no federal dollars to any city, any state like California that says, and you just said to me, you agree, sanctuary city law wasn't in existence, this girl would likely be alive tonight. So my question is, why should the federal government give 1 penny to any city that doesn't want to obey the laws of this country?
I think that all sanctuary cities should cooperate with ICE officials.
And if they don't, should we not give them federal dollars?
That's a whole other debate, and I'm sure the president will be tweeting about this.
Give me a reason why we should. If I'm President Trump, I'm saying not a dime to these cities.
Well, there's a lot that money gets used for, that it's not just for sanctuary
city. Too bad.
If
you're going to allow criminals, seven-time felons.
Mayors in sanctuary cities all over this nation are paying attention to what happened today, and I believe they will change
I'm going to hold my breath.
Be more cooperative.
And that's not going to bring back Kate Steinle, is it?
No, it's not, and it's an absolute tragedy. We've been saying that from the beginning, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get the 11 million illegal immigrants who are here out of the country, that you're going to get rid of a policy that a number of Republicans have backed, including Rudy Giuliani, who said that we need to make sure that people can come out of the shadows to cooperate with law enforcement.
Let me go to Tomi.
Well, as someone that is actually residing in California right now, I can say as a young woman living in California, this sends a very clear message to me, and that is the illegals are protected in this state and Americans are not. And these, I think that Jessica, her heart is probably in the right place, but anytime that you defend sanctuary cities, especially after this verdict has come out, I have to ask you, why would you still defend a policy that is harboring criminals? That's the end of the discussion. It's not, oh, there's a lot to look at here.
It's not the end of the discussion. When we have a national tragedy, and we have Dana on the panel who's a firearms expert, when we have a mass shooting, we don't say we need to take away all the guns because someone misused
Liberals
it.
do all the time.
They don't say we take away all the guns. We want responsible gun reform. 94% of Americans want.
I have to interject.
Well, please.
You know, law-abiding Americans are always blamed for the actions of criminal thugs like Zarate, this individual who murdered Kate Steinle. Law-abiding Americans who are Second Amendment practitioners are constantly blamed for the actions of repeat offenders like this illegal alien. But yet when the illegal alien does it, oh, it was an accident. He meant to shoot a SEAL. If only law-abiding Americans got as much courtesy and were afforded that as much as this individual was. It's never going to happen. But now you can understand why so many law-abiding Americans are so disgruntled at this.
I got to let you all go. Sad night.
Yeah.
Thoughts and prayers with this family. This system failed this family and this young girl. Ed Henry.
Big story number 2 is that Kate Steinle's killer was acquitted yesterday on charges of murder. The facts of the case, I want to give you the entire facts of the case so that you know what the jury may or may not have been doing. So let's begin with what exactly happened. Sarah Rumpf has a very good piece over at Red State talking about what exactly happened in this case. So you recall that during the campaign, the Kate Steinle case came up over and over. Beautiful young woman who was killed on a San Francisco pier by an illegal immigrant. The illegal immigrant had a gun that had been stolen from a federal agent's car, I guess, and the gun had been fired. The guy admitted to killing the girl. The only question was, did he do it, was it an accident, or did he do it on purpose, or was it criminal negligence? So he was charged with second-degree murder. The jury also could have found for involuntary manslaughter. That was on the table as well. It seems to me that second-degree murder was too high a charge, and that involuntary manslaughter seems like the situation that best fits the evidence. This may be a case, to give the best gloss on the jury, this may be a case where the jury was basically thrown off by the prosecutor's failing to press the charges properly. That's a possibility here. And I'll explain why in just a second. So here is what is undisputed. On July 1st, 2015, Kate Steinle was fatally struck in the back by a single bullet as she walked on Pier 14 with her father to view the San Francisco Bay. Jose Inés Garcia Zarate was a Mexican citizen illegally in the United States, and he fired the gun that killed Steinle. So first of all, for political reasons, it doesn't matter whether the guy was convicted or not. This guy should not have been in the United States. He had been deported, I believe, 5 times before for 7 separate crimes. If the man had been a citizen in the state of California, he probably would have already been in jail for life, because there's a 3 strikes law in the state of California. Mostly it involves violent crime, not drug offenses. But the idea that he would have been out on the street is absurd. He would not have been out on the street if he'd been convicted of a bunch of different felony drug offenses. He would be in jail right now. He would not be out on the street if he were a citizen. So he actually had the special privilege of being deported, then recrossing the border, coming back, and then, you recall, he was picked up on a drug charge by the local authorities. The feds found out about it. They asked the local authorities to hold him so they could come get him. And because San Francisco is a sanctuary city, he was then released into the general population as well, where he got a hold of this gun and killed Kate Steinle. Now, was this a murder or was this an involuntary manslaughter, I think is an open question. It's pretty clear to me that this was an involuntary manslaughter. I'll explain to you why in just a second. I'll give you all the legal breakdown, putting on my lawyer hat. Here is the case for the defense. So basically, what happened is that this piece of garbage illegal immigrant, and he's not a piece of garbage because he's an illegal immigrant. He's a piece of garbage who is an illegal immigrant. He was walking around on the pier, and he has the gun. The defense says that he found the gun on the pier. Okay, this is like the lamest excuse ever. How many times have you been walking around and just find a gun lying around? You're walking around and boom, look, there's a gun. Okay, it never happens. And the idea that this happens in San Francisco on a regular basis is insane. San Francisco has some of the tightest gun laws in the nation. So he says that he's walking around, he finds a gun, he picks it up, he goes, a gun. He picks it up, and then magically the gun just goes off. It is clear from the evidence that the bullet hit the cement before it hit Steinle. So it wasn't like he picked up the gun, aimed it at Steinle, shot her in the back. Okay, he picked up the gun, he fired it, it bounced off the concrete, it hit Kate Steinle in the back, it killed her. And the defense was that he's a moron. That basically he was walking around, hey look, a gun. He picks it up, it goes boom in his hand for no reason at all. It's just a pure accident. The bullet bounces, it skips off the concrete and hits Kate Steinle in the back and she dies. The problem with this particular theory is severalfold. 1, the gun had been missing for 4 days from a federal agent's car. Somehow it just winds up in the hands of this illegal immigrant. Criminal, repeat criminal. It's just magic. It was like a normal person who found it on the boardwalk over at the San Francisco Pier. It wasn't me, it wasn't you. It was an illegal immigrant who's been deported 5 times. Right? Just magically. Amazing how that works. He picks it up. They question him, and during the questioning, he says that he was trying to fire it at the seals. That he saw a seal out there, or a sea lion, and he was trying to fire it at a sea lion, and then his story changed, and he said that it fired by accident. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, defense lawyers said the shooting was an accident that happened when Garcia Zarate, who had a history of drug crimes but no record of violence, found the gun wrapped in a T-shirt or cloth under his seat on the pier just seconds before it discharged in his hands. Because that's what I do. When I see like a bundle of cloth under my seat at a public pier, I reach down and I start investigating, and if I find a gun, I go, ooh, a gun. Okay, Matt Gonzalez of the Public Defender's Office said his client had never handled a gun. Yes, I'm sure. And was scared by the noise, prompting him to fling the weapon into the bay. Okay, so number 1, if you accidentally fire a gun, so apparently he says he was scared by the noise. It wasn't that he shot the woman and then thought that he would be convicted of it, and so he threw the evidence away into the bay. Instead, he took the gun and he threw it in the bay because he was scared by the noise. That's what I do. When my child scares me, when my child makes a really loud noise and we're by the ocean, I just take my kid and fling him in the ocean. Let me just tell you, this is something that normal people do on a regular basis. Oh my God, a car backfired. Let's drive it into the ocean. That's something that you're scared of the fight. Oh my God, a gun made noise? What is this? Boom, boom stick. Okay, during the trial, jurors watched video from Garcia Zarate's 4-hour police interrogation in which he offered varying statements about his actions on the pier. Number 1, when someone constantly changes their story, that's a pretty good indicator they're not telling the truth. Okay, at one point, he said he had aimed at a sea animal. At another point, he said the gun had been under a rag that lay on the ground near the waterfront and that it fired when he stepped on it. Gonzalez said it was clear in the video. By the way, guns don't fire when you step on them. Just note to everybody, there are people who are saying that it was a Sig Sauer, and that this was a Sig Sauer with a quick trigger because it was basically set up for a federal agent who knows how to use it. It only had 4 pounds of trigger pressure. Okay, even if it only has 4 pounds of trigger pressure, you can't step on a gun and it fires. Okay, as a typical rule. It's extraordinarily rare. Like, something has to actually push on the trigger in order to make the gun fire. That's not how guns fire, unless the hammer was already cocked or something. Gonzalez said it was clear in the video that he did not fully understand what the officers were asking through an officer's Spanish translation. Well, that's sort of his problem. I mean, they're speaking Spanish to him. It's not like they're speaking English and he doesn't understand. Grainy surveillance footage taken by the camera, positioned a quarter mile away, showed that just before Garcia Zarate took a seat on the pier, a group of 6 people gathered at the spot. Gonzalez said it was possible those people had discarded the gun that killed Steinle. Yes, I'm sure that's what happened. 6 people just gathered and decided that instead of throwing the gun in the bay to discard the gun, which is 5 feet away, they decided what would be better. We need to get rid of this gun. You know what we'll do? We'll just leave it lying around. Best idea I've ever had. We're not going to take this gun, toss it in the bay. No. We're just going to leave it right here for some poor, unsuspecting illegal immigrant to find and randomly shoot a lady. Okay, so Steinle was not hit directly, but rather the bullet hit the concrete ground and ricocheted up to hit her. The gun was a Sig Sauer, had been stolen 4 days prior. The defense also presented evidence that the Sig Sauer has a propensity to accidentally fire. So it has a hair trigger in single action mode. Apparently, among well-trained users, it has a lengthy history of accidental discharges. Okay, accidental discharges does not mean that you have not acted with criminal negligence. If you pick up a gun and you point it anywhere near the vicinity of people and your hand is anywhere near the trigger, that does not count as a pure accident. Okay, a gun is a dangerous weapon. Everyone knows this. Okay, this is why you are taught when you buy a gun, when you train with a gun, you are taught never point the gun anywhere you are not willing to kill somebody. Never point the gun anywhere you're not willing to destroy. Never have your finger anywhere near the trigger if you don't mean to fire it. Okay, but the idea is that, again, this guy's a dunce, and he walks up, and he doesn't know what a gun is. It just looks like a fancy cheese cutter. And he picks it up, and then boom, it goes off in his hand because he never even touched the trigger. Okay, this is, so they say that this is the defense presenting a reasonable doubt case. And they said he's a homeless illegal immigrant, unfamiliar with the gun, and that's why. Okay, so I think that what happened here, if you're trying to make the best case for the jury, is that there was a prosecutorial overreach. So they pushed hard for a first-degree murder verdict or a second-degree murder verdict, which suggests that you must have intent, right? That you have to have intent to have killed. Involuntary manslaughter does not require intent. So the prosecution in this case said that he was playing like a game of Russian roulette in his head and just shot the lady. That's weak. What they should have charged was involuntary manslaughter. They overcharged, which a lot of prosecutors do. They overcharged. What they should have done is charge involuntary manslaughter. Second-degree murder in California is willful but not deliberate. Like, for example, you fire a gun into a crowded room. You don't mean to kill any specific person, but you know there's a good possibility somebody is going to die. Willful but not deliberate. Involuntary manslaughter in California, the standard is without malice, without intent to kill, with reckless disregard for human life. So the difference between involuntary manslaughter and excusable accident is participation in either an unlawful act not amounting to a felony, so that would be picking up an illegal gun, or a lawful act involving a high degree of risk of death or great bodily injury. That would involve picking up a gun and pointing it anywhere in the vicinity of people. And in fact, there's a law firm out here in California that has a defense law firm that has a very good rundown on this law, and the exact example they use of involuntary manslaughter is a woman who's in a fight with her husband, brandishing a gun at her husband, the gun accidentally goes off and kills her husband. Right? That falls under involuntary manslaughter. Okay, Jeff Sessions has a statement on this. Was clearly involuntary manslaughter. The jury could have found that. It's possible they decided to just throw out everything because the prosecutor didn't do their job. But whatever it is, this is an unjust verdict. The guy should be in prison for a very long time for at least involuntary manslaughter. And beyond that, the reason this is a political issue is because this bastard never should have been in the United States in the first place. He should not have been here.